And sometimes when people have written you off and they thought you were dead, you were not dead at all. You were just waiting for your season. You were just waiting for your season to change. So just because things are not happening in your life right now, it does not mean that you're dead. It does not mean that your time is up. It's simply you waiting for your season to change. And if this is not my season, I won't complain. I'll just estimate. I'll just wait for the change to come. God gives you a due date, but not a deadline. God gives you a due date, but not a deadline. When you have a deadline, when the deadline comes, it's over. I'm sorry. You missed the deadline. You cannot apply for the job. You missed the deadline. You can't apply for the loan. You missed the deadline. But when you have a due date, it does not end. A woman can be due on July 31st. The doctor says she's going to have the child on July 31st. 9 times out of 10, very few women deliver on the due date. And when the due date comes and nothing happens, it still does not mean it's not going to happen. Because a due date is not a deadline. It's just when we anticipate it to happen. But if it does not happen on your due date, it's still coming. Lord, I wish I had somebody here. If you missed your due date, that doesn't mean that it's over. It means it's still coming. Any day now, any day now. 3 people tell them any day now, any day now. As a result of them not knowing who you are in God, they overlook what you bring to the table. And you're sitting there talking to somebody, and God has his hand on your life, gave you a second wind, and gave you some fight back, but they don't know who you are, and they'll have you convinced that you're not significant and important in the kingdom. But a stranger will meet you. A stranger will meet you and ask you, would you pray for me? Is there a word from the Lord? And the reason the stranger gets excited about you, because a dead man can see life when he sees it. A dead man knows life when he sees it. Oh, God. But when you got people around you that'll have you convinced you ain't doing nothing, you ain't doing anything, and you're not significant, you're not important, they try to kill you before time. That's why the grave has to give you back. And I'm telling you, after today, I promise you, after today, you got to change about 4 or 5 of your connections. Some people have been hooking on to you for so long, you stink and smell like them. They're dead and you're alive, but you smell like that because you're too close. I said, Lord, why would an Euroclydon storm move you from left to right? When you read the scripture, and there are bones, he said, and the bones connected to his bone. It didn't say bones connected to another bone. It said bones connected to his bone, which means some of you are connected to bones that God never intended you to be connected to. If he uses the personal pronoun his bone, it meant that we were supposed to be together before we went through this. And since this is over, we're going to rehook. We're going to hook up again. And when you have an Euroclydon, it shifts you from side to side. It can push you away from what you shouldn't be connected with and push you to what you should be connected with. Some storms are not there to give you torment. They're there to push you where you're supposed to be. But he couldn't do it when you had flesh. He couldn't do it when you had money. He couldn't do it when you had a raise. He couldn't do it when you had a title. He had to strip you down to your bone. And when you have nothing left but your bone, you say yes to your will, yes to your way, do what you want to do. I'm almost done. Then he says, prophesy to the winds, east, west, north, and south. What does that mean when he said prophesy to the wind?